Welcome back, friends. My name is Solomon Jagwe. I am a 3D artist and animator based here in the United States of America. So today I just wanted to go over a little bit of my background. You may have seen some of the content that I've created on my channel here. But today I just wanted to spend some time just to share with you some of the work I do. One thing that I love to do is I love to draw. And if you've seen some of my work, you've seen me draw some robots, you've seen me draw things like this. And so I come from a background where I used to be a traditional artist. I drew with pencil and ink and sculpted using clay. So some of the things that you've seen me do on this channel come from me being someone who loves mechanics, who loves to create with my own hands. So when I was growing up in Uganda, I used to do a lot of drawing. I used to paint. I used to sculpt in wood and in using clay and all of that. So, and I've been influenced by a lot of my growing up in, surrounded by nature. So in Africa, we're surrounded by nature, especially in my country in Uganda. And so I said my first drawing that I ever did was actually a horse. I was in boarding school in Uganda, and someone had come in. Their parents, I think, lived in Kenya, and they had a farm. And so I was like, man, I really need to try out, to learn how to draw a horse. And this guy just tricked me. He told me that if I give you half of my plate of posho, and posho is like I guess cornmeal. But if I gave him half of my plate, that he would teach me how to draw a horse. And so that was my starting journey in drawing, is that I had to give half of my plate to someone so that I could actually learn how to draw a horse. But down the road, I continued to study nature. And so that when you just look at my website, you see a lot of influences that come from African culture. And I love robotics. So where I come from in Uganda, there are a lot of these, what they call them, border borders, and they're like motorbikes that just weave in and out, out of the traffic. And so when I see things like that, I'm always thinking of, I wonder what this country will be like in the future, like maybe 100 years from now. Are we going to have like, border borders like this, or motorbikes that look like this? And so when I'm drawing, when I'm creating, I'm always thinking out loud in a sense. And so for someone who has not been who has not lived in the US for the big part of their lives, the first time I came to the US, I actually thought that a lot of the things that I saw, like the vending machines, I thought they were robots. Honestly, I thought I'm coming from Africa, and they called Africa the third world. I'm coming to the first world. Everything around me I thought was going to be like a robot of some kind. So anyways, a lot of the things that I saw influenced me into drawing some things like that. And so even when it comes to wildlife conservation, I am a big proponent for the conservation of wildlife, and also for us as human beings to take care of the planet. And so some of his drawings are like a ranger, a wildlife ranger who's protecting wildlife, but he has this super weapon that he uses. A lot of it, you can see influences of Wakanda, but I imagine something like that, like having some kind of ranger out, unit that's protecting wildlife. So that's why this is APU, anti-poaching unit, And then, of course, I love to draw wildlife too, like nature. When I was growing up in Uganda, I would just go into the hills with my pencil and my sketchbook, and I would just draw anything and everything that I could come upon, So this, for example, is an ant that I saw somewhere, and I just drew it from memory. I remember seeing this ant back in Uganda, but now, right now in the US, because I'm far and removed from that, I still draw from memory. In those things, being able to draw from memory has really helped me in being able to do like a 3D modeler and a 3D artist, because it makes me, I guess, be able to create anything and it also encourages me to be very, how would I put it? Observant, You know, like even when I'm on a train, when I'm taking a bus, when I'm taking a cab, you know, I'm always thinking of how am I going to interpret the world that is before me and then recreate it into something else, right? So this is another drawing that I did, and I usually try to time myself. Like this one I did like in about 10 minutes. I wanted to see like how fast could I like draw this little thing that I see in front of me, you know. So and then this one is definitely one of my favorites. It's a rhino beetle. These things are massive, but when they are battling, it's pretty impressive how they go at each other. And then of course, some of these things are influenced by some things that are in the spark of a moment. You know, like one time we were at dinner with my two kids, and I saw my daughter holding a banana, and I had my sketchbook near me, and so I was like, you know what, an idea just came into my head and reminded me of this character from Uganda. It's called Wakaima, which is like almost like Bugs Bunny. And so I drew real quick, and that became an idea that became a character. And so as an artist, if you are anyone that's watching today, if you're an artist, if you're interested in creating content like that, don't let a moment pass by where you're not, you know, if an idea comes in your brain, it does help to have like a character, or rather a pen and pencil nearby so that you can actually draw that. Anyway, and I love drawing wildlife, and that's one of the characters I was able to draw over here. And then of course robots. Coming back to robots, so a lot of the animations that you see on my channel here, a lot of animated robots, but that's again me actually thinking out loud, and just like almost like a commentary, like social commentary of what's going on around the world with artificial intelligence. Of course, the war in Ukraine against Russia, a lot of it has really influenced the onset of like robot wars, I guess, drone wars, right? And then of course I love creating vehicles. I love to draw vehicles that are based on science fiction, and I take anything that I see, even if it's like a dragonfly, that gives me like an idea for me to be able to just draw the shape of a dragonfly and then see how I can derive like a vehicle out of it, right? Anyway, so this character that I was telling you about that started off as a banana. Eventually I was able to do the final sketch over here, started coloring it, and then created a character out of it, and this became a t-shirt line. So if you're out there and you're an artist and you have an idea, it can become merchandise, because that's what happened for me in this one. And that's the final character. So this character is really famous in folklore in Uganda, and it's supposed to be like a wild, like a wise character. And our grandparents used to tell us these stories of Wakaima, Waguludi, and Wakai Wango. That's the elephant and the leopard and the hare. And that's how we got to know some of the morals. And they'll tell us, they try to impart in us some ideas of how to live life, and they will use stories from wildlife. And this one is I guess one of those things that I usually do when I'm not on the computer, is I use my phone. I actually draw on my phone. So this was the Galaxy Note 5. It has a webcam that comes with it, and you are able to draw on the phone. So this illustration, the entire illustration was started on that phone, and I was able to do a character out of it. It started like as a simple sketch, and then I started coloring it, and there's the one that you see right here. It goes at the bottom of the phone, the Samsung phone. You know what's interesting, that iPhones don't have wands except tablets. You know, it would be so cool if like an iPhone had like a wand like that, but then again, there would be like competition, I suppose. But I love working with my Galaxy Note 5. Right now I have an S22 Ultra. That's the one that I used to draw with. But this, I think it's, if you don't have a computer, this is one way to start drawing, you know, to get you into drawing on your phone. And you're able to color, because I colored this entire image using my phone. So I love to draw. Any opportunity that I get, I draw as much as possible. All right. And there's the final character. And so in terms of 3D art, one of the things that I've done since I came to the US is, I've worked with different companies. I've worked as a 3D artist and animator. And one of the things that I do is I create environments for video games, for cinematics, for films. And I always try to recreate like realism in a sense. And so you will see a lot of like this, I model this from scratch using 3ds Max. And you can see the wireframe of how it started off. And I usually start off with a sketch of some kind, and then I'm able to recreate that then. So this is the model, and then this is the early stages of lighting before I add textures to the 3D model. And then I add lighting over to the right hand side over here. And the light is really what brings everything to life. That is really where things start to shine. And so my love for rendering and 3D modeling comes from being observant. Again, I love studying natural lighting. I'm a photographer. I have a photography background, and so coming from studying light and shadows and things like that and lenses, it's such a cool like skill to have when you're a 3D artist, because everything starts to make sense, right? So that's one of the things that I've done. And then I also love rendering vehicles. For a long time, I worked for defense contractors for about 14 years as a 3D artist and animator, making cinematics. And I usually, even as I worked as an art director, I would create concepts, that would help my team, to bring the ideas of the creative director, of the CEO to life. And I usually use my Wacom. Not Wacom. This is the Apple Pencil or my iPad Pro to start off with a sketch. And then once the sketching is done, then I'm able to either print it, do a 3D print, so that I can have a physical representation of what I want to show as the idea. But I don't always have to print it. I can also just do a simple sketch that I'm able to show to the team, just to help guide what we are trying to achieve. But 3D printing is pretty cool because you're able to then show in physical form what you've created, and I'm always inspired by when I see like Disney. They always have like these little creatures that they create for the modelers to use, and even James Cameron does it, and Peter Jackson does it, and so a lot of these big time film directors have teams that actually create physical sets of the things that they're trying to portray, so that then they can show to the team, right? And then another thing that I love to do is rendering, like realistic rendering. So when you look at my TikTok account, you're gonna see a lot of 3D renderings of the robots, but a lot of it is realistic rendering, and that goes back to my experience as a 3D artist, learning to use lighting almost like paint with light, right? And so that's what I do. So this particular environment is in 3ds Max, and I used a program called Octane Render. It's a rendering engine that makes it possible for you to capture lighting and render much faster than when we used to use Mentor. Mentor was another rendering engine that was difficult to work with. My goodness, we would wait for hours for a shot like this to come out, because it has to calculate all the light that is bouncing around the vehicle that's coming in. And it's like in real life, you don't realize these things are happening, but light bounces again and again, and it's anything that has reflective material is going to catch a glint of that. So as you can see over here, this is the vehicle in 3D on this side. There's no light at this point, but this right here is the final render with the building being reflected in the glass, and then even on the car paint, so that's how I'm able to capture or even render some of these animations that you see on my TikTok account and also on my YouTube channel. And then one other thing, again, I've shown you this one before, but that's where being a photographer is helpful, because as a photographer, you're forced to study materials, light, shadows, and things like that without being observant, you would miss out. So when I take that experience of having been out there in the wild, taking photographs of butterflies, of water, of old buildings and things like that. That is something that has helped me as a 3D artist to be able then to translate that particular expertise into the 3D rendering. And then studying nature, growing up in Africa, that has been such a benefit for me, because when I look at nature, I'm always thinking of how these characters can come to life in a 3D environment. So when I do like a model, like for example this one, this is a ZBrush on the iPad. There's a new version of ZBrush. It used to be that ZBrush could only exist on the PC, but eventually Maxon purchased ZBrush, from Pixel Logic, and then they combined it into one package that now can be used on the iPad. You no longer need to be on the computer to be able to sculpt in ZBrush. You can do that if you want, but if you're like in an airport and you are waiting for your flight, in a connecting flight, you're able to sculpt in ZBrush on your iPad using Apple Pencil, So you can see some of the detailing right here. The Apple Pencil, because it has pressure sensitivity, it makes it much easier to put the detail on this model right here. So this is like a beaver character that I modeled in ZBrush, and I was able to then take it from the computer onto the iPad Pro and be able to add more detail. That's the beauty of it, is that you're able to put detail using the capabilities of the Apple Pencil to put like real little small details here and there. It feels like sculpting on the screen. That's what's wild about it. And so I love ZBrush, and there are other programs like Nomad that you can use, but because ZBrush is industry standard, that's why I love to sculpt using that. And then I love to render like almost abstract settings like that. This is more like an oil rig, and I was imagining some kind of like a connecting point, and the flow of the oil is almost lit up like that. It's just ideas that sometimes pop into my brain, and then I just create it. So that's the thing that I was able to create over there. And then one of my best experiences was going to Bwindi Impenetrable Forest in Western Uganda. This is one of the only like three countries. Like if you think, I don't know if any of you have seen mountain gorillas in real life. Maybe most of you are familiar with King Kong, but mountain gorillas can only be found in 3 countries: in Uganda, in Rwanda, and Congo, the Republic of Congo. So you can find lowland gorillas in other countries in West Africa, but mountain gorillas can only be found in 3 places, and that is Uganda, in Congo, and Rwanda. And so I was fortunate enough to go visit the mountain gorillas in Bwindi. It changed my life as a filmmaker, as an animator, as a 3D modeler. Seeing those gorillas in real life, my goodness, they are majestic and they're indeed powerful. So my art, whenever I draw, whenever I sculpt, whenever I create something, it's always like a life experience, So for me, when I created this sculpture of this mountain gorilla in ZBrush, I was thinking of my experience when I went trekking in the Bwindi Impenetrable Forest. And so that I created this from memory. It's also helpful to have references. So I made sure to take plenty of photographs from my journey and then I was able to create a short film out of it. It's still in production, but that's one of my like babies. Like when I have a project that you've been doing for such a long time. I remember James Cameron was talking about Avatar, how it took him almost 10 years to complete the first Avatar, and that was because the technology hadn't caught up with his vision. So I've had this dream of creating this mountain gorilla film, and I had to learn how to sculpt mountain gorillas in that film. So that is the mountain gorilla. And then of course, because I was studying the nature and the foliage of those forests, I had to also practice rendering them in real time to be able to add like little details. It's the little details that make a difference. Like when you're far away from a forest undergrowth, you probably won't see a lot of the water droplets that are on the leaves of some of these plants. But once the camera gets close, you're definitely going to be able to see that. And if you've not put in the effort to detail it, like adding the shader that looks like water to the little geometry, because this is geometry on another geometry, but it's textured with a leafy texture to make it look realistic. This entire scene that you're looking at, guys, is a 3D scene. This is not a photograph, although I have experiences from like being a photographer. This is not a photograph. This is a real 3D environment modeled and all of that. And being observant is extremely important, because again, I was drawing on my experiences of having gone into the Bwindi forest when I was tracking the mountain gorillas, and I was able to recreate that. So my encouragement to you, if you're an artist, if you're an animator, is that don't waste any experience that you have when you go out there, right, into the world. Make every moment count. If you have your phone, take a picture of that moment, because you will be able to then utilize that experience to later on create an environment. And this is another one that I love studying nature, but I also love studying the human body, because if you're going to be able to create skeletons that you're going to add into a character for animation, you really need to understand the physiology of a human body. Because if you don't, you'll be placing bones where they're not supposed to be. And when you animate that character, it will not be like the locomotion will be off, because you did not study the placement of the bones. Like a big toe has multiple bones for where the pivot is as a character is dancing. These are things that you have to pay attention to. Others, you may start putting the bone over here because you didn't take the time to study what a human skeleton is supposed to look like, And so that's why it's so important to be observant. And I remember when I was in Uganda and we used to have these classes in our boarding school, they were teaching us biology. And I remember my friends complaining, man, when are we ever going to use some of these things in real life, right? But now I am so grateful to my biology teacher who told us, guys, this will come handy one day. And as an artist, I see the value of this, because being able to know where a foot is, the ankle bone is, and all of these, like, the bones in the foot, has helped me be able to be a better rigger, has helped me be a better art director, because I'm able to help my team to point out any problems that I see where the bones are not posted properly, right? So, and then this was my first architectural rendering. And the reason I added this to my website is because I want to look back and see where I started. It's so important when you are starting out to look back where you came from, like the journey that you've taken. For me, it's a throwback to when I was getting into 3D Studio Max and Maya, and the people that gave me like insight, who really advised me how to render, how to apply textures, how to make sure that things are not repeating, things like that. So I always hold on to some of those old sketches that I've done in the past, and also old renders that I've done to remind myself to be humble, so that when I'm talking to somebody else, I remember when someone else, another mentor, encouraged me at that point in my journey. So that is art. And then you can, if you go to my website, again, it's solomonjagwe.com, you can click on About Me, and you'll be able to see some of the things that I've done. I think it was in 2023 is when I was fortunate enough to be added to the Unreal Animation Fellowship. This is one of the most coveted after like fellowships, with the Epic Games, whereby they give you this amazing opportunity to be trained by people from Disney, from DreamWorks, you name it, from different parts of the US, and you immersed in like over 3 weeks of just intensive studying and learning the Unreal Engine. I was so blessed to be part of this animation fellowship. And at the end, you work on a group project that you share with the team, that so everyone creates something and then they combine it to make like a final reel. So that's what I was able to create, this character right here. Again, as you notice, it has some robots in it. It's because I love science fiction. That's why you see a lot of the work that I have on my TikTok channel is it has to do with robotics, because I love robotics, I love science, and I love animation, right? And I remember when I was starting out with motion capture, because the animations that you see on my TikTok channel, they're using motion capture technology, right? So that it's someone wearing a motion capture suit and then playing out the roles. And I've played multiple characters where I've worn the motion capture suit, as you can see right here. And earlier on, when I started out on this journey, I didn't even have like a helmet. So I made my own helmet. I borrowed my wife's helmet. It's a bike helmet. And then this part right here is a guitar stand. That was the first model. And then eventually I upgraded and I was able to add my iPhone. And then this is like an iPhone holder. And so wherever I act out with my face, it's able to be captured by the iPhone. And so there are two robots that I've done so far. One, of course, it was the Tesla robot with the animated motion capture dancing. But then there's another robot that is custom that has a facial animation rig, so that when I act out with my face, when I say something, the robot also ends up saying that. So this is the kind of rig that I am using. And the motion capture suit that I use is called the Perception Neuron Studio suit. It's amazing. It really captures your performance from beginning to end. And this was 2019 when I first started out. And since then, a lot of the technology has improved greatly. Things have changed. Things are getting better and better. And you can see some of the old computers. I remember my daughter came in one of my offices and saw this old computer. It's like, Dad, what is that? You know, she could not believe that there were such computers. Because nowadays, when you look on a desk of an artist, it's gonna have like flat screen monitors, you know. But back in time, there were these like really bulky looking monitors, and I remember they came in different resolutions. But back then it seemed like really fun, right? So, and let's go back to the animation part over here. I wanted to talk to you about, share with you a little bit about my animation journey. So I have an animated series that I created with a group, like a team members. I started off as just a one-man team, right? But as I continued working, I met people that had a shared interest in trying to promote African culture and animation. And you can see some of my drawings. These are the early sketches of me when I had this dream. So my encouragement to you, if you have a dream to create like an animated series or a comic book, or write a story and things like that, is that please don't throw away those old sketches, because those will be like markers in time that you can look back and say, man, that's where I started out. Because you can look on the wall over here at some of the early sketches of the adventures of Nkoza and Nancha, which is the animated series that I created. And it was inspired by my two kids and my wife. And as I started working with meeting other people in the diaspora, I was able to share with them my vision of what I was trying to create. So these are the early characters, but if you go to the Nkoza and Nancha channel, you can see these are the most recent characters. These have been updated, and that was after I met other artists who I shared my vision with. I'm like, man, could we join forces and work together to bring these characters to life? And one of my favorite team members is called Bruno Lewis. He's from Uganda, and he has been instrumental in working with me together with 4 other team members, Mark and Charles and Robert. These team members have been so helpful in bringing Nkoza and Nancha to life, Ronnie Mayanja, and so many other friends that have come along. And so here, so you can see some of the early animations. And so this is our YouTube channel. You can actually check out some of the videos. And if you go to YouTube, just search for Nkoza and Nancha, and you'll be able to see some of the videos that we've created over here, right? But one thing that I've learned is that YouTube is not always going to be there. TikTok is not always going to be there. So you need to have your own website and a place where you can connect with your audience. And that's why we created this website. And we also created a mobile app, that's available for iOS, Android, and Amazon. So when you go to nkozaananja.com and you click app at the top on mobile app, you'll be able to see options to go to iPhone and iPad. This one is for Android, and then we also have for Amazon. And when you download it, you'll be able to unlock a couple. So we have languages. If you are interested in learning some words in Ugandan languages, go ahead and download the app. You'll be able to, the language part of it is free, and you can see how the kids are here enjoying some of that kind of work. This is like one of my favorite things to do, is to be able to create something that is going to help my community or people that are out there in the diaspora who are interested in African culture and languages, and they're able to learn something and share with their little ones. So this has been very, very helpful to many members or in the diaspora, those who are curious about Ugandan languages, and just friends of Uganda. If you've never been to Uganda, I highly, highly recommend it, that you may travel to Uganda and see the beauty of our country, right? And then if you have this app, you'll be able to learn some words that you can share on the way on your journey to Uganda and in East Africa, right? And we also have comic books that we've created, and you can find them on Amazon. So this is the vision that I've had for a long time. And so when you look at some of the work that I am doing, it's really coming from a place of having these ideas in my brain, but wanting to share it with the rest of the world. And I'm hoping that if you have a dream, if you have like a vision, if you have like a passion for storytelling, that don't sit on it. Let that idea come out and onto paper. Find some team members, have some friends who you can share it with, so that you can find a little bit of help to help you get it from from the ground up, from just a concept to an idea. And don't hesitate, or don't be afraid to even do like a quick sketch here and there, because those sketches are going to be the foundation for you to share the idea with others. And when they ask you, where did you start, you're able to point to some of those things that you've done in the past. But this has been an amazing journey. Thank you so much, guys, for joining me. For everyone that has tuned in today, much love to each and every one of you. Have a blessed day. I'm praying for you. Please stay safe, and please dare to dream big. Do not give up on your dream. Bye for now.